So here is the question that Jessica sent us. Uh, my sister and I have talked about buying a duplex together for years. I've seen some quote multi-generational homes on Oahu for sale that could fit the bill. Does anyone have advice for buying a home with a family member? Is it possible to finance with two separate mortgages, or should we save up and pay cash? Is our dream going to end up in a nightmare? So this is great. So multi-generational homes are something that's real on both Oahu and Maui. So I want you both to comment on it. But since this was primarily, since Jessica does live in Honolulu, Jessica from Honolulu, congratulations, Jessica, a member of the Islander Ohana alumni that moved to Oahu. So I'd like to hear, Scott, what advice do you have for Jessica, who's deciding on, you know, should I buy a home together with my sister? Should we do a multi-gen home? What's your advice, Scott?
Yeah, it's funny. I've probably dealt with this conversation 6 times in the last month, and it's always a very technical, you got to sit and think about it. So to answer the question on cash financing, you wouldn't get 2 loans. You would basically qualify together, get 1 mortgage on the property. So you could probably buy more property together. Obviously, the more people you hooey up together with and qualification standpoint. The biggest thing to me, though, from a philosophical standpoint is, whenever you go into an investment with someone or a group of people, and for example, when I do my projects, I've got a 25-page operating agreement that spells out in detail every example of what happens. What happens if I die? What happens if one of the investors dies? What happens if an investor wants out and wants to sell? What happens if something's not going right? There's all sorts of things you got to think about because you are investing together. And the longer you're in a marriage together in that way, the more likely your commonality and life is going to change, and people are going to want different things. What happens? You get 6 years down the road and one person wants to sell and the other one doesn't have the capacity to buy them out. What happens? You got to talk through a lot of those scenarios. Or if someone does pass away for some crazy reason, or there's a divorce or something, and things start to get affected, there's a lot of moving parts. The simplest and easiest is always doing something on your own. Whenever you add other people, especially family members, you got to be really careful and map things out and go over scenarios and document them so you don't strain that family relationship when you go down the road.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice, Scott. There's all kinds of issues to consider, and it's kind of good that you have that kind of experience that you can share about things to look out for, making sure that you kind of think through all those things in advance as much as you can. That makes a lot of sense. Heidi, what about you? What's your advice for people like Jessica that are considering, how do we kind of put together a multi-generational home? Does it make sense? Should we do it? How does it work? What are the pitfalls? What things should we be considering?
Yeah, well, Scott touched on this, but if you're going to buy a property with someone, you need to get pre-qualified together. And the same lender needs to look at both of your information. You can't just each individually get pre-qualified to buy something. Another scenario, if it could work, is just have one person buy the property and then the other person paying rent. Or some people set up a separate business entity like an LLC to own that property in, and then define what the terms of ownership are for each person. So yeah, I mean, I think Scott did a great job answering that question.
Well, and thanks, Heidi. You added a lot of important pieces, which is, I think, on the qualification side about how you do it and the LLC possibility, et cetera. So, Jessica, you're here with us, and I'm so glad you are, and you submitted this question in advance. Is there anything, if you have a follow-on question, please pop it